Chapter 1331. Molly felt moved when she looked at Tatiana's concerned gaze. She had never felt motherly love before. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at Tatiana, who was around her mother's age. It didn't matter if Tatiana's feelings were genuine or just a show. At that very moment, she felt like someone actually cared about her. "Mrs. Heath, this is too valuable. I can't possibly accept this. Child, just take it. I'm not using it to make you change your mind. I really just want you to get well soon." Linus put down the fruits and flowers he was holding. "Miss Kingston, it's our fault this time. My mother and I are not here to convince you to change your mind. We sincerely hope you'll recover soon." Yale looked at the two of them. Clearly, he didn't believe that they were so kind-hearted. The truth was that it didn't matter if the result of the DNA test was out or not. The Heaths planned to cut ties with Crystal either way. They would have helped her if she was even remotely remorseful. Crystal didn't even think she was in the wrong at all. It was as if she thought the entire world was obligated to be good to her. The Heaths were done putting up with a cruel and ungrateful person like her. Tatiana caressed Molly's swollen cheek. "Why is it still so swollen?" Olivia explained. "Molly's body has been ravaged by the poison since she was young. It lowered her immunity system and made her self-recovery slower than a regular person. A wound that would take us 3 days to heal would take her a week or more." "How sad." Tatiana poured the fish stew out. "I made this myself. Have a taste." Molly didn't know what to do. So, she looked at Olivia. Olivia wanted no part of the conflict, so she only spoke from the perspective of a doctor. "You should drink it. You're in a bad condition right now and need more nourishment. Grandma is a good cook. Even my grandpa loves her cooking." Olivia wasn't lying. She even learned from Tatiana how to get Mason hooked on her cooking. Molly then turned her gaze toward Yale, who didn't really want her to accept these gifts. But he couldn't exactly say it out loud. After all, they meant well. "Drink it." Molly nodded. "I'll do it myself. Don't move. I'll feed you." Linus didn't say anything else. He looked at Yale. "Why don't we talk?" Yale trusted Olivia a lot. "I'll leave my sister in your hands, Dr. Fordham." "Okay." Yale and Linus walked out of the room together. Tatiana smiled bitterly. "Molly, you might think I'm just putting on an act to gain your sympathy. But I really do feel bad for you. You don't have to have any reservations. Just focus on resting and getting better." Molly said thankfully, "Thanks. I heard that you were adopted by the Kingstons. Do you know where your biological parents are?" Judging by how badly Adalia treated her, Molly wouldn't have a good life even if she got better. Tatiana wanted to help her out. After all, parents would only love the children that were of their own blood. Olivia explained, "Mr. Kingston told me that she was fished out of the water. She lost all the memories of her childhood." "That's right. Yale tried to look for my parents for me, but there weren't any leads." "It's okay. I'll help you find your parents no matter what happens." Chapter 1332. Molly's pain subsided with Tatiana's comforting words. She quickly felt drowsy as she had eaten her fill. She closed her eyes and fell asleep. Tatiana asked in a whisper, "How is she?" Olivia shook her head. "She's safe now, but it'll be very hard for her to get pregnant." How could that be? She's still so young." Tatiana was a woman too. She knew how painful it was for a woman to lose the ability to conceive a child. "It has to do with the poison she was fed after she was born. The dosage was very small and wasn't enough to kill her instantly. Instead, it affected her body gradually. Then, she was washed away by the water unexpectedly. That was how she survived and wasn't poisoned to death. She crossed paths with the Kingstons after that. They spent quite a lot of money to nurse her back to health. She wouldn't have lived so many years otherwise." Olivia sighed. She had only begun to get slightly better. Her pregnancy took a lot out of her. It's unfortunate that she had to lose her baby in such a violent way. She's lucky to be alive. "Don't worry, Grandma. I'll try my best to treat her since she's my patient. I'm not just doing this for the Heath family. I'm doing this because of my obligations as a doctor." "Thank you." Olivia looked at the time. "Aren't you leaving, Grandma?" She had done all that she needed to do. She wanted to ask Tatiana to go home with her. Tatiana waved her hand. You can head back first. I'll stay for a while longer. Olivia was a little hesitant. She knew what kind of person Tatiana was. She might be a little manipulative at times, but she also had fierce maternal instincts, which was obvious from how she treated Crystal. Initially, she thought Tatiana was just putting up a show to protect Crystal, but she changed her mind. Molly was already asleep. Who would she put up a show for? Alright, I'll leave you to it. Olivia was quite tired. She had just returned from Carathea. She didn't even have time to recover from her jet lag before she was asked to treat Molly. She was tired and sleepy. Yale and Linus were in the corridor outside. Yale had a stern look on his face, and his back was straight. His usual subservient demeanor was completely gone. Linus handed him a cigarette, but he didn't take it. In the past, he would already be lighting Linus' cigarette for him. This time, he had one of his hands in his pocket as he leaned on a pillar. A hint of loneliness flashed in his eyes. I won't change my mind no matter what you say. No, you're mistaken. I'm not here for Crystal's sake. Linus lit a cigarette, looked toward the sky, and exhaled the smoke. It's a fact that what Crystal did this time is completely unforgivable. Even now, she's unrepentant. My father and I are prepared to let her get whatever she deserves. Yale frowned as he looked at Linus' expression. If it were anyone else, they could be lying, but not Linus. He would never lie. Why? Isn't she your sister? Will you really allow her to suffer? What about the reputation of the Heath family? None of that is more important than the baby that was in Miss Molly's womb. It doesn't matter if you believe me or not. It's true that we're trying to atone for Crystal's sins. After all, Crystal is a part of the Heath household. Linus snuffed out the cigarette he was holding. So, there's no need for you to resign. You don't have to punish yourself for someone else's mistake. Olivia exited the room. Molly is already asleep. You have to let her rest well for the coming days. No cold water or chilly winds. Make sure to keep her warm. I'll come again tomorrow. Thanks. Linus was waiting for Tatiana to come out. Olivia said, Uncle Linus, Grandma wants to stay and watch over Molly. Let's go. Okay. Yale thought about what Linus had said. He opened the door and saw Tatiana leaning on the bed and looking at Molly gently. Was he seeing things? At that very moment, Tatiana looked a lot like Molly. Chapter 1333. Olivia yawned when she got into the car. Linus patted her on the head. Are you tired? A little. I was just used to Carathea's hours. I'll adjust in a couple of days. Olivia closed her eyes and was about to rest. Linus suddenly spoke up. That person that you worked with is still alive. Olivia had been busy the entire day. She almost forgot about Undecim. Really? Wayne didn't catch him. He was only bluffing at the airport to get you to stay. I might have taken you away, but your identity has also been exposed. Wayne has crossed swords with Ethan many times over the years. He's a very troublesome enemy. He will try to achieve his goals no matter what he has to do. Uncle Linus, I understand. But since I'm back at the Heath residence, he won't be able to do anything to me, right? Linus sighed. You're underestimating the persistence of a man. Especially a man who's basically in heat. Olivia blushed. It was a very apt description for Wayne. Olivia, you stole his ring. But why didn't it explode when you put it on? The ring would automatically detect its wearer's vital signs. It's because it was you. He didn't want you to get hurt. So, he was never mad because you stole the ring. He was mad because you were leaving him. Olivia thought about what Wayne told her the night before she left. He was even willing to bring her husband and child over to settle down in Carathea. She had lied to him. He probably wouldn't forgive her. I'm just reminding you not to put yourself in danger again. It'll be nearly impossible for him to do anything to you now that you're living in the Heath residence. I'll understand, Uncle Linus. As soon as they got home, they saw the butler running toward the house. He has always been very level-headed. Why is he running all of a sudden? The result must be out. Result? What result? Linus suddenly grabbed Olivia's arm. Something big is about to happen in the Heath household. He pulled Olivia all the way to the study. Mason was sitting uneasily in his chair with a stern expression. The stressful atmosphere made Olivia nervous. "Grandpa, what are you?" The butler placed a document on the desk politely. "Mr. Heath, I retrieved it personally. It's guaranteed to be real." Olivia kept her mouth shut. She instinctively knew that the document contained something very important. Mason looked behind them and didn't see Tatiana. "Where's your mother?" "She's at the hospital taking care of Miss Kingston." "Okay." Mason opened the document and took a look at the test result. Linus gulped. He walked to Mason's side restlessly. "Dad, what's the result?" "Take a look for yourself." Mason threw the report to the side and massaged his temples. Olivia's curiosity was also piqued. What were they looking at? She leaned over and saw the words, "Absence of a biological relationship detected." She inhaled sharply in surprise. "Grandpa, Crystal is..." Mason opened his eyes. He was visibly upset and had some fatigue on his face. "As you can see, she's not my daughter." Everyone fell silent, thinking back to the things that Crystal had done in the past, and all the love he showered on her, yet she wasn't his daughter. There was no way Mason wasn't devastated. Mason slammed his palm on the table and stood up. How dare Lisa do this? His face was flushed, and veins popped on his forehead. He had a terrifying look on his face. "Calm down, Grandpa." "Dad, I'll go interrogate her and find out where my sister is." "Don't worry, we'll be able to find her quickly." Chapter 1334. Mason raised a hand and silenced Linus. That woman had the audacity to try something like this. She must have made preparations for this. She might even commit suicide if you try to force an answer out of her. We won't be able to get any information if she dies. Then, what do you suggest? Come up with more plans and we can divide and conquer. Mason quickly realized something. She gave birth to her child at the same time as your mother back then. So, the child she took away had to be your sister. Linus gritted his teeth as he asked, "Her baby died. If it really was my sister, then, we'll make the entire Walker family pay," Mason said angrily. Linus quickly left. Only Olivia and Mason were in the room. She comforted Mason softly, "Grandpa, my aunt is definitely still alive." "Don't worry." Mason's anger subsided. He slumped into his chair and smiled resignedly. "Olivia, that was an embarrassing revelation. The daughter we doted on for so many years turned out to be a fake. A mere maid played all of us. If word got out, the entire Heath family would become a laughingstock." Olivia knew that this incident was a great blow to Mason. She didn't have any ideas on how to proceed. "Grandpa, there's a silver lining in every cloud. You might have been fooled, but it'll be a good thing once we get my aunt back." Mason's eyes were lifeless. "You saw how viciously Lisa beat Florence up. She's a venomous woman. I'm afraid my daughter is already. You shouldn't give up so quickly before the outcome is confirmed, Grandpa. That's your flesh and blood, after all. If I were Lisa, I wouldn't dare to murder the baby outright. If you trust me, allow me to investigate the truth of what happened back then with Uncle Linus." "All right, I'll leave it to you." Olivia looked at Mason and felt like he had suddenly gotten a few years older. She sighed in resignation. No one would be happy if something like this happened to them. Olivia went back to her room and fell asleep quickly. She was too tired to care about Wayne or Crystal or anything else. She felt the other side of the bed sink a little in the middle of the night. Someone then moved next to her. She snuggled into the man's arms. "Don't try anything. I'm really tired." Ethan smiled as he looked at Olivia, who was nestled against his chest like a little kitten. She mumbled a little and went back to sleep. She was the most adorable in this state. She kissed her on the cheek. "Go to sleep. I won't do anything." The butler was whispering to Mason in the study. Mr. Miller went into Miss Olivia's room again. Mason frowned. Did he really think that the Heath residence was his home? How dare he come and go as he pleased? Should I ask him to leave? Forget it. Olivia is very tired. Don't wake her up. We'll talk about this later. There were more important things to tend to for the Heath family. Tatiana returned home very late. She went to the kitchen to prepare some ingredients despite her fatigue. The men were waiting for her in the study, and she suddenly remembered something. "Oh, Is the result out? Linus noticed that she didn't really care about that. She didn't even call them to check the entire time. She was completely focused on Molly. It's out. Crystal is not a Heath. Tatiana washed her hands and wiped them with a hot towel. I knew it. Mason and I are quite smart. Why would we have such a foolish daughter? Chapter 1335. Linus rubbed his temples. Tatiana's logic was a little weird. Linus didn't know that Tatiana thought about this every time she cleaned up the messes Crystal made. Crystal wouldn't have done so many stupid things if she had inherited their intelligence. Luckily, Crystal wasn't her daughter. Or else, it would be really humiliating. Mom, Crystal is the least of our worries right now. Our top priority is finding my real sister. Tatiana snapped back to reality. She wanted to rush to Lisa and settle the score. Lisa said her child died back then. Does that mean she... Mom, you have to calm down. Lisa is cunning. Going to question her now might have adverse effects. She might even retaliate if we force her hand. Then, what should we do? We have to seize the initiative. Don't worry, I've already sent some people to look into my sister's whereabouts. What you have to do is not alert her. You have to try to probe her for information while feigning ignorance and keep her oblivious to what we're doing. Tatiana was visibly upset. She covered her face with her hands. I was so good to her. I treated her like my own sister. How could she do something like this? Human greed is bottomless. It never gets satisfied. Tatiana sighed. My poor daughter. Where is she now? Hints of worry and panic lined their faces. It had been so many years. They couldn't be sure that she was still alive. They were afraid that they would only end up finding a corpse. Mason patted Tatiana on the shoulder. Our daughter will be fine. Don't worry. Everyone could tell that those were nothing but words of comfort. Tatiana nodded. What are you planning to do with Crystal? She's an important piece to finding our daughter. We can't let her go yet. I'll pay Lisa a visit. Tatiana walked through the corridor to Lisa's room despite her fatigue. This was the first time she was in Lisa's room. The Heath family had plenty of assets. It was normal for the rooms of their maids to be decently decorated. But Tatiana couldn't help but feel some discomfort when she noticed that Lisa was using the same rug as her. It was a very hard rug to come by due to the difficulty of its design and the procurement of the ingredients to make it. Only one tribe in the entire world made rugs like this. They only made 10 of these each year. Lisa was just a maid, but she had one in her room. Lisa didn't expect a woman as haughty as Tatiana to come to her room. She panicked when she saw the disdain in Tatiana's eyes. She had been by her side for many years. She knew what Tatiana was thinking. She hated it when other ladies wore the same jewelry as her at banquets, let alone a maid like her using the same rug. What brings you here, Mrs. Heath? This rug was the one that got dirty, and you asked me to throw it out. I thought it was a pity to throw out something so expensive. So, I kept it. I'll throw it out right away. Lisa smiled subserviently. No need. It's just a rug. Tatiana took a good look at Lisa. Why hadn't she noticed that Crystal and Lisa looked alike before? She couldn't help but feel angry and disgusted when she thought about the things that Lisa had done in the past. Take a seat here, Mrs. Heath. Lisa pretended to pat the dust off the couch. The leather couch was completely spotless. There wasn't even a speck of dust on it. Even if there wasn't a logo, Tatiana could tell that this couch was designed by her favorite designer. The leather used was the exact same one the couch in her room was made of. Chapter 1336. After Tatiana sat down, Lisa got on her knees and pleaded, Mrs. Heath, I'm aware that it's all my fault this time. Miss Heath told me about how Yale was cold to her and asked me to come up with a plan. She was the child I raised, and I didn't ask for permission beforehand because I was too anxious. Then, I got into a fight with the maid. I'm too ashamed of my actions. I'm willing to bear all the consequences. Lisa was very smart. She didn't reveal her concern for Crystal while she said all those things. Anyone would just think she was a diligent and responsible maid. She was also trying to find out if Tatiana knew anything. Tatiana sighed. It would be great if that was an option. I wouldn't have to worry so much. I brought Miss Kingston some soup today, and I also talked to Yale. He wouldn't relent no matter what I said. He's adamant about fighting us and getting justice. Then what about Miss Heath? I don't think she can get away scot-free this time. Yale has all the proof he needs, as well as witnesses. He even has dirt on Crystal's past deeds. He might really bring up her past deeds if he gets desperate. If that happens, it won't be a short sentence for her. Lisa whispered, "Don't worry, Mrs. Heath. I handled all those incidents in the past cleanly. He can't possibly have any dirt on Miss Heath. Even if Crystal manages to get out of trouble, you probably won't. But you've served me for so many years. If you have anything you need help with regarding your family, just let me know. I'll help however I can." Lisa licked her lips. "Mrs. Heath, you've helped me out a lot already. I'm really grateful for everything you've done for me. Everything's fine with my family. I deserve everything that might happen to me. My husband and I are separated. My child is already dead. I don't have anyone I might be worried about. If that baby hadn't died, it would have been Crystal's age by now. I'd be able to take care of her even if you go to jail. What a pity, by the way, how did the baby die?" Lisa's heartbeat quickened. She suppressed the shock in her eyes. The baby was already weak when it was born. It was just unlucky. Tatiana tried to probe Lisa for information for some time, but Lisa was incredibly tight-lipped. So, she gave up and left. "Mrs. Heath, can you please let me go home one time to talk to my family as a favor for serving you for so many years? It's not that I don't want to, but these are special circumstances. Linus posted his men here to guard you. I can't just let you leave. Don't worry, I'll have the lawyers try their best to get you out of this." Tatiana's act was perfect. Lisa wasn't able to tell if she knew the truth. Lisa felt extremely anxious being kept prisoner like this. Rather than the lawsuit, she was more worried that the truth of what happened back then might be exposed. Tatiana's demeanor changed immediately when she got back to her room. "Lisa is definitely suspicious. All the stuff in her room is of the same brand as mine." It was not just the rug or the couch. She had taken a look at the dressing table before she left. Even the skincare products were the same as hers. "Mason, do you think Lisa is trying to replace me?" She grabbed Mason's collar. "Say, did she ever try to seduce you in the past?" Tatiana was disgusted that someone by her side was trying to imitate her to such a degree. Mason slapped her hand away. "Are you out of your mind? Crystal's DNA test was done with my DNA. Didn't you see the result?" Tatiana grunted. "It's because you didn't see her room. It's decorated in the exact same style as our master bedroom." Chapter 1337. That night, other than Olivia, who slept soundly in Ethan's arms, the others were burdened with worry. Ever since Lisa met Molly, she felt that Molly was quite familiar. After Tatiana came over, a thought crossed Lisa's mind. Could it be her? As soon as the thought came to mind, Lisa denied it. Back then, Lisa had drugged that sickly person for 7 years. Even if that person didn't die in the flood, she couldn't have survived. Moreover, a flood happened that year, and many lives were lost because of it. Many people went missing, let alone that sickly person who was as weak as a kitten. Even strong winds could easily topple her. That was what Lisa thought, but she still felt panicked for some reason. Lightning streaked across the sky accompanied by thunder. Lisa's face looked pale under the flashing light. Tatiana already had trouble sleeping, so she suddenly woke up from her slumber. She had a dream just now. In the dream, she went back in time to the day she gave birth. She had a complicated delivery, and she was in labor for a whole day. After she gave birth to the child, she took a glance at the child before fainting from fatigue. Back then, Mason was on a business trip. She only had members of the Benson family with her. As soon as the child was born, it was placed inside an incubator. Tatiana felt like she saw someone exchanging the name tag on her child's hand with another baby's name tag. Children who were just born looked almost the same. They were wrinkly and looked a little yellow, so no one would have noticed even if the babies were switched. My child. Tatiana looked at the empty room. She and Mason had been sleeping in different rooms a long time ago. The heater was fully functioning, but Tatiana felt cold. Her mind was filled with images of the time back when she was giving birth. Back then, it was extremely cold in winter. In the 1 hour she was giving birth to the child, it suddenly snowed. She gave her daughter the name Crystal, for she was reminded of the crystal-like snowflakes. Tatiana couldn't sleep at all. She kept thinking of Molly's face. Before she left, Molly still seemed to be in ill health. Draping a shawl over her shoulders, Tatiana got up and went into the kitchen. She poured out the chowder in the pot. Then, while it was still dark, she went to the hospital again. Olivia had a nightmare. In the dream, gunshots sounded everywhere. Then, she saw a bullet heading toward Ethan. "No, what's the matter, Liv?" Ethan patted her on the back. "Did you have a nightmare again?" Olivia traced his handsome face with her fingers. When she felt the warmth of his body, she finally felt a little more assured. It's nothing." There were many people in Olivia's dream. She saw Wayne aiming a gun at Ethan, and at the critical moment, Jack took the bullet in Ethan's place. Now that she thought about it, that man must have been Kurt. She had never seen it before, so why did she dream of that scene? "Ethan." Olivia leaned against his chest. "Please be safe." Ethan didn't know why Olivia said that, but he could guess that she had a dream about him. Ethan smiled. "Okay. By the way, how's Jack?" "Don't worry, he's recovering quickly. He could get out of bed a long time ago." Ethan caressed her hair. "Don't be afraid. I'm here. Go to sleep. It's still dark outside." Olivia felt sleepy again. Nestling her head against Ethan's shoulder, she fell asleep again. In another corner of the world, Wayne had a cold look in his eyes as he fiddled with the dart in his hand. The magnetic board in front of him was covered in information about a person. It was filled with the person's background and preferences from a young age. The dart in Wayne's hand landed on one of the photos. In the photo, Olivia was 10, and she had just received an award in an international piano competition. She was wearing a white chiffon dress, and she looked tender and innocent. Another dart sliced through the air, landing on a photo of Olivia when she placed second in a chess competition. She was called a genius, and she was getting an interview in the photo. From a young age, Olivia was outstanding in every aspect because she was carefully nurtured by Jeff. The darts in Wayne's hand landed on separate targets. In the end, the last dart pierced the photo of Septem, who was also called the Deadly Bloom. She was wearing black stealth attire in the photo. A malicious and crazed smile appeared on Wayne's lips. "Septem, we'll meet again soon." Chapter 1338. It was only 5:30 p.m. by the time Tatiana arrived at the hospital. Yale was a little surprised. He knew that Tatiana was very dedicated to Crystal. "Mrs. Heath, I've already told you that you don't have to work so hard. No matter what you do, I won't give up on suing Crystal." "Yale, I've also told you many times that I'm not doing these things for Crystal's sake. The weather is terrible tonight, and I can't sleep. That's why I came over to check on Molly. Moreover, it's easier for me to take care of her. You're a man, after all." Tatiana stubbornly shoved Yale aside as she quietly entered the room. When she saw Molly, she felt reassured. She sat down next to Molly and covered her with a blanket. The swelling on Molly's face had receded a lot. Her eyebrows were tightly knitted together, and she seemed to be dreaming of something as she kept mumbling. Help! Molly woke up from her dream, startled. Her face was filled with terror as she looked around her fearfully. "Did you have a nightmare? Mrs. Heath, why are you here?" Molly glanced at the pitch-black sky outside. She remembered that Tatiana had left a long time ago. Yale poured out a cup of warm water and held it to Molly's lips. "Have some water. What did you dream of?" Molly put a hand to her head. Ever since Molly suffered Crystal's forceful impact yesterday, she had been feeling heavy in the head. Then, she had a long dream. She saw a little girl being abused since young. The girl never had enough food, and she wore rags. She was also abused by her so-called grandmother. Curiously enough, she could only eat spoiled food every day, but the old woman would always give her a bottle of milk. When the little girl was 7, there was a great flood in the area. When her grandmother was evacuating with the rest of the family, she told the little girl that they had forgotten their documents in the house. When the little girl turned back, she was swept away by the water before she could reach the house. The murky water enveloped her on all sides. She thought that she would die in the flood, but fortunately, she survived. Molly was the little girl in the dream. From the scattered pieces of her past, she managed to find her memories. It hurts. Molly put a hand on her forehead. A look of agony appeared on her face. What's going on with her? Tatiana was extremely worried. Should I get the doctor? When she was young, Molly hit her head against a rock while she was in the water. So, there's a blood clot in her brain, and it caused her to lose her memories. Yesterday, she received another hit on her head. Dr. Vanessa has already given her acupuncture treatment. Do you remember something? Molly nodded. I had a dream. I was being bullied in that dream. Can you remember where your home was? What about the family members in the house? I only remember that I lived in a rural village. The person who took care of me was my grandmother. She was very fierce, and she rarely gave me food to eat. She would hit me and shout at me for no reason. Yale asked, "What's your grandmother's name?" "Elle don't know." Yale frowned deeply. He couldn't figure out the details of her background based on this information alone. Who else was there in the home aside from your grandmother? What about your parents? I've never met my parents. I heard that they went to work in the city, and they let my grandmother babysit me. Many children in the village were like me. Their parents went to factories in the city by the sea to make machine parts. However, their parents would come home during the holidays. My parents never showed up. So, my grandmother hated me and would always shout at me. Tatiana's heart ached when she heard that. Reaching out, she touched Molly's face. Poor child. Take your time and think about it. I'm sure we can figure it out. I don't know the name of the place, but I can draw what it looks like. Yale, give me something to draw with. Chapter 1339. For now, you need proper rest. You can look into your background anytime, so don't overwork yourself. My head is hurting a lot. I'm worried that I might forget it soon. Yale, please. Soon, Yale asked someone to get Molly a sketchbook and some colored pencils. Molly was the most skilled with watercolor and oil paints. When Yale wasn't with her, painting was the only thing that could heal her. She tirelessly immersed herself in painting, and because of that, she produced many amazing artworks. Unlike her appearance, her art style was quite rugged. When Tatiana saw the unique art style, a look of surprise appeared on her face. Could it be that you're Millie herself? Millie was internationally famous. 8 years ago, her work, Against the Wind, stunned the crowd. Going against all odds, it won the Golden Painting Award. All the artwork Millie used to participate in art competitions was sold in auctions at high prices. Against the Wind had the highest collectible value, and Tatiana had bought it at an auction for $30 million. It was quite a high price for a new painter who had just made an appearance. Tatiana didn't only come from a wealthy family, but her grandmother's family was also a family of scholars. Tatiana's mother was a famous modern painter as well. So, Tatiana was quite skilled in the arts from a young age. Usually, she spent her time listening to music or enjoying artwork at art exhibitions. Back then, when Tatiana was invited to be the award presenter for the Golden Painting Award, she was quite fond of Millie. She even wanted to get close to her idol, but Molly didn't show up. Only her assistant was there to receive the award in her stead. Since then, Millie seemed to have disappeared. There were no longer any artworks from Millie. Tatiana always thought that it was a great pity that a new painter with such potential would disappear like that. Even today, the painting was still hanging in her room. It served as a constant reminder. Life was a constant struggle upward. Once you had stepped onto a path, there was no longer any chance for you to regret it. Molly's face turned red. Mrs. Heath, you know about the alias I used to enter competitions. Not just that, I've even bought your artwork. It's a small world, isn't it? I even tried to ask around for information on you. I can't believe I get to see you again so many years later. Thank you for your approval, Mrs. Heath. I was just painting for fun. Molly was talking, but her hands never stopped moving. In just a few minutes, she completed a sketch of a person's face. The old woman in the sketch looked very rough, and she had a sinister look on her face. Even though it was only a sketch, she gave off a vicious air. This is my grandmother. Then, Molly sketched out more faces and a picture of the village. Yale thought about it earnestly. A small fishing village by the sea. It's quite difficult to look for the village based on these clues alone. Molly, are there any more buildings? Yes. I'll sketch them out for you, Yale. Molly sketched a reservoir. She was about to draw more, but she didn't seem to be in great health. You should stop drawing and rest for a bit. I have some soup for you. I made it yesterday, and it's chicken noodle soup. Try it. Tatiana found it to be a pity as she took the stationery from Molly's hands. Thank you, Mrs. Heath. Come on, I said that you don't have to be so polite around me. Child, I'm sincerely fond of you. If I had a daughter like you, I'd be so happy. Would you like to be my goddaughter? I can take care of you in the future. Molly was aware of Yale's hatred toward the Heath family. So, even if she liked Tatiana a lot, she didn't dare to say yes. It's okay, I won't force you. You can take your time to think about it. Yale brought Molly's sketches with him as he went to talk to his assistant. It shouldn't be hard to find fishing villages with a reservoir. Go and look into it right now. As the sky gradually turned bright, the assistant came back with good news. Mr. Kingston, we found it. It's Mound Village. The reservoir and many of its buildings match the ones in Miss Molly's sketches. Chapter 1340. Olivia was woken up by Crystal's voice. She muttered, "Ah, how noisy." Ethan's voice rang out in her ears. "Shall I cut off her tongue?" Olivia's sleepiness was instantly gone. Opening her bleary eyes, Olivia said, "You're getting more violent these days." Ethan gave her a peck on the lips. "Liv, to me, no amount of money can buy your happiness. To me, neither Crystal nor anyone else is as important as your happiness." With the ruckus Crystal was making, Olivia could only get out of bed. She had no idea what Crystal was making a fuss about either. After a quick washing up, Olivia left the room. She noticed a huge mess at the entrance of Crystal's room. Crystal was even shouting, "You're all useless trash. You can't even make a proper breakfast for me. What sort of maid treats her employer like this?" Olivia glanced at the food strewn on the floor, then at the young woman whose body was scalded from the hot chowder Crystal had thrown at her. What happened? The maid was new here, so she had never experienced something like this before. Before this, she heard that Crystal was difficult to deal with, and the other cunning maids had shoved the responsibility onto her. She didn't expect Crystal to behave so oddly. "Miss Fordham, Miss Heath asked for breakfast, but she doesn't like anything that I serve her." "Why are you looking at her? I'm the real young lady of the Heath family. You bunch of ingrates." Olivia patted the young woman on the shoulder. "Go and apply some ointment on your burns. I'll handle things here." "But, no buts. Just go." The young woman glanced at Olivia gratefully. But Crystal was incredibly upset when she saw that. "Get off your high horse, Olivia. Don't think that you can order me around just because Dad acknowledged you. I'm the real young lady of the Heath family." The word, real, sounded extra ironic when she said that. Mason hadn't said anything about it, and since Olivia wasn't a talkative person, she didn't expose Crystal. "No matter what identity you have, you shouldn't insult people at will. The food you threw away without hesitation might be the meal of someone else's dreams." Olivia had been to places rife with war before. Some people were even willing to commit murder in exchange for a piece of bread. The children there were all skin and bones. They looked very pitiful, indeed. "Hey, what are you trying to be, a saint? What's with the ruckus this early in the morning?" Linus slowly walked over to them with a cold look on his face. "Linus, she's bullying me. She's showing off in front of me just because Dad has been mad at me for the past few days. Also, the wretched maid was bold enough to bully me, a pregnant woman. The food she made was disgusting. She clearly doesn't respect me at all." On his way here, Linus had noticed the maid who got scalded. He knew then that Crystal was causing trouble again. Now that he didn't think of Crystal as his biological sister anymore, his expression was filled with coldness. "If you can't get used to the food, don't. Alfred, Give her some plain pasta. Plain pasta. Linus, are you out of your mind? Take it or leave it, Crystal. If you won't eat it, no one will be delivering food to you today. Crystal was still mad. Linus, even you don't care about the child in my belly anymore. Linus sneered. The child isn't mine. Why should I care about it? With that, he walked away with Olivia. He didn't say another word to Crystal. Left alone, Crystal could do nothing but wail and cry. Linus didn't get much sleep, and he also had a headache. His expression was extremely dark. She's not my biological sister, but she was raised by the Heath family regardless. It's so embarrassing that she turned out like this. You shouldn't concern yourself with that, Uncle Linus. Where are we going today? I found the homes of Lisa's mother and mother-in-law. First, we'll go to. A window of the car beside them was lowered, revealing Ethan's handsome face. We're going to Mound Village.